this episode, we're going to build a beginner-friendly foundation for threat intelligence, with a focus on what different types of intelligence actually deliver and how they help OT security make better decisions. Many new learners hear threat intelligence and imagine secret reports, hacker names, and dramatic warnings, as if intelligence is a magic ingredient that instantly tells you what will happen next. In reality, intelligence is structured information that reduces uncertainty, and its value depends on how well it fits the decisions you need to make. In OT, that fit matters even more because changes are slow, downtime is costly, and safety constraints shape what you can do. So you need intelligence that is credible, actionable, and appropriate for industrial environments. Threat intelligence is not only about attackers. It is also about vulnerabilities, exposure, and the patterns that show how incidents unfold in similar organizations. When used well, intelligence helps you prioritize controls, choose monitoring focus, and communicate risk in a way that leadership and operations understand. The goal here is to understand the main types of intelligence, what each one delivers, and how to avoid common misunderstandings that cause teams to either ignore intelligence or overreact to it. Once you see intelligence as a decision support tool rather than a news feed, it becomes far more useful. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A helpful first step is to clarify what threat intelligence is and what it is not. Threat intelligence is not raw data, like a list of suspicious IP addresses or a stream of alerts, because raw data becomes intelligence only after it is evaluated, organized, and interpreted in context. Threat intelligence is also not speculation, like rumors about a new attack, because intelligence should be based on sources and analysis that can be assessed for credibility. In practice, intelligence sits between information and decisions, meaning it is information shaped to answer questions that matter, such as what threats are relevant to our environment, what tactics are being used, and where we are most exposed. Beginners sometimes assume intelligence is only for advanced security teams, but in OT, even basic intelligence can help because it can validate whether certain scenarios are realistic and whether certain controls should be prioritized. For example, intelligence might indicate that a particular industry is seeing increased exploitation of remote access pathways, which reinforces the importance of controlled vendor access. Intelligence can also clarify time sensitivity, such as whether a vulnerability is being actively exploited, which can change patch prioritization even in a constrained OT environment. When you define intelligence as decision-focused, you start to see why types matter. Different types support different decisions. Strategic intelligence is the broad, high-level type that helps leaders understand the overall threat landscape and make long-term choices. Strategic intelligence focuses on trends, motivations, and industry-level risks, such as whether certain industries are being targeted for disruption or extortion, and what the likely impacts could be. In OT, strategic intelligence can be valuable because it helps justify investments that take time, like segmentation modernization, improved recovery capability, and stronger third-party access governance. Beginners sometimes dismiss strategic intelligence as too vague, but it becomes useful when it connects to planning questions, like what kinds of incidents are becoming more common and what capabilities organizations are building in response. Strategic intelligence also helps align security with business risk language, because it often frames threats in terms of operational disruption and safety implications rather than technical details. The limitation is that strategic intelligence is not designed to tell you what to block tomorrow, because it is too broad and not time-specific. Its job is to reduce uncertainty about direction, not to provide immediate actions. In OT programs, strategic intelligence helps ensure that the roadmap matches real-world pressure rather than internal assumptions. When leaders understand the direction of risk, they are more likely to support the steady work that reduces exposure over years. Operational intelligence sits closer to the middle, focusing on campaigns, threat actor behaviors, and how attacks are unfolding in real environments right now. This type of intelligence may describe how attackers are gaining initial access, what systems they target next, and what their objectives tend to be, such as ransomware-driven disruption or long-term access. In OT, operational intelligence can help you evaluate whether your environment's threat surface matches the observed patterns, like whether your remote support model resembles the entry paths being abused elsewhere. It can also help guide incident response preparation by suggesting what behaviors to watch for, such as unusual remote sessions, credential misuse, or abnormal lateral movement toward engineering systems. Beginners sometimes confuse operational intelligence with technical indicators, but operational intelligence is more about behaviors and sequences than about single data points. It answers questions like what does an attack look like over time and what steps does an attacker usually take. This is valuable in OT because you can map those steps to your own architecture and identify where you can break the chain through controls and monitoring. Operational intelligence can also inform tabletop exercises and response planning because it provides realistic storylines without requiring you to invent them. Its limitation is that it still must be interpreted for your environment, because a campaign affecting one industry might not translate directly to another. The value comes from context and comparison, not from copying. Tactical intelligence is the type that describes tactics, techniques, and procedures, meaning the methods attackers use to achieve goals. Tactical intelligence is often organized around patterns of behavior, such as credential theft, remote tool misuse, persistence mechanisms, and ways of moving between network zones. In OT, tactical intelligence can be especially useful for improving detection and for validating that controls cover realistic behaviors. For example, if tactical intelligence shows that attackers often pivot from business networks into OT by abusing shared services and remote access, you can focus monitoring and boundary controls on those transitions. Beginners sometimes think tactical intelligence is only for technical teams, but even at a conceptual level, it helps you ask better questions about whether your trust boundaries are defendable. Tactical intelligence also helps connect threat talk to control catalogs, because tactics map naturally to control areas like access control, segmentation, logging, and change detection. The limitation is that tactical intelligence can become overwhelming if it is too detailed and not tied to a decision, because there are many tactics and they evolve. In OT, where changes are slower, the best use is often focusing on a small set of tactics that are most relevant to your threat surface. When tactical intelligence is filtered through your architecture, it becomes actionable rather than noisy. This is why choosing the right intelligence type matters. Tactical intelligence is most useful when it is paired with a clear control improvement or detection goal. Technical intelligence is the most granular type, and it includes concrete indicators and artifacts like file hashes, domain names, IP addresses, tool signatures, and other measurable technical signals. Technical intelligence is often what people think of first because it seems directly actionable, like block this address or detect this signature. In OT, technical intelligence can help improve monitoring and incident response, but it has to be used carefully because industrial environments often have limited monitoring coverage and strict requirements for stability. Technical indicators can also be short-lived, meaning attackers change infrastructure quickly, so blocking a specific address might not provide long-term protection. Beginners sometimes assume technical intelligence is the most valuable because it seems precise, but precision is not the same as usefulness if the indicator is not relevant to your environment or if you cannot implement detection safely. Technical intelligence also risks creating false confidence because blocking a few indicators does not address the underlying exposure, like uncontrolled remote access or weak segmentation. The best use of technical intelligence in OT is often as part of incident handling and targeted monitoring rather than as the primary risk control strategy. It can also support validation, such as confirming whether observed traffic matches known malicious patterns, but it should not replace broader controls. When used as a complement, technical intelligence can improve speed and accuracy during response without becoming a distraction. Another important intelligence type for OT is vulnerability intelligence, which focuses on weaknesses in products and the real-world context around them. Vulnerability intelligence is not just a list of vulnerabilities. It includes information about which products are affected, how the vulnerability can be exploited, whether exploitation is being observed, and what mitigations are available when patching is delayed. In OT, vulnerability intelligence is valuable because patching often requires careful scheduling and vendor approval. So you need to prioritize based on consequence and exploitability, not just severity scores. Beginners sometimes assume all vulnerabilities are equal, but in OT, a vulnerability on a critical controller in a sensitive zone is different from a vulnerability on a non-critical system. And vulnerability intelligence helps you make that distinction by providing exploitation context. It can also highlight when a vulnerability affects widely deployed industrial products, which can shift your focus toward compensating controls like isolation and monitoring. Vulnerability intelligence supports practical decisions like whether to accelerate a maintenance window, whether to restrict a conduit temporarily, or whether to increase monitoring for certain behaviors. Its limitation is that vulnerability information can be incomplete or confusing, especially when vendor communications are delayed, so you still need a disciplined internal process for triage. When vulnerability intelligence is integrated with asset inventory and criticality, it becomes a powerful decision tool. In OT, this integration is often more useful than trying to chase every technical indicator. Threat intelligence is only useful if it is relevant, and relevance depends on context. So beginners need to understand the role of internal intelligence versus external intelligence. External intelligence comes from outside sources, like industry reports, vendor advisories, and shared community information, and it helps you see what is happening beyond your own environment. Internal intelligence comes from your own observations, like alerts, incident investigations, asset changes, and control performance data, and it tells you what is happening inside your own boundary. In OT, internal intelligence can be especially valuable because it reveals your actual exposure and behaviors, such as how often remote access is used, where segmentation drift occurs, and what anomalies appear during maintenance. Beginners sometimes believe intelligence is something you buy, but a mature program generates intelligence by collecting evidence and learning from it. External intelligence can suggest what to look for, but internal intelligence confirms whether it applies. The best programs combine both, using external intelligence to set hypotheses and internal intelligence to validate and prioritize. This combined approach reduces both blind spots and overreaction. When intelligence is grounded in your own environment, it becomes less about headlines and more about operational reality. A common beginner mistake is treating intelligence as if it should always produce immediate action and then dismissing it when it does not. Different types of intelligence deliver different kinds of value, and not all value is immediate. Strategic intelligence might influence a budget cycle, operational intelligence might influence a response exercise, tactical intelligence might influence monitoring design, and vulnerability intelligence might influence patch planning. If you demand that every intelligence item produce an urgent ticket, you will either create chaos or you will start ignoring intelligence because it is too noisy. A healthier approach is to define what intelligence questions you want answered, such as which threats are most relevant to our remote access model, which vulnerabilities require compensating controls now, or which tactics should our monitoring focus on at the enterprise to OT boundary. Then you assess intelligence against those questions, and you only act when it changes a decision. Beginners also sometimes confuse volume with quality, but more intelligence feeds can create more noise without improving decisions. The goal is to filter and curate intelligence so it supports your risk model and your control calendar. When intelligence is curated, it becomes a steady input to governance rather than a constant disruption. Finally, threat intelligence foundations in OT come down to understanding what each type of intelligence delivers and then using the right type for the right decision. Strategic intelligence supports long-term planning and investment. Operational intelligence supports understanding campaigns and preparing response. Tactical intelligence supports designing controls and detection around realistic behaviors. Technical intelligence supports targeted monitoring and incident handling. And vulnerability intelligence supports triage and mitigation under OT constraints. The most important beginner takeaway is that intelligence is not magic. It is a way of reducing uncertainty so decisions become more defensible. When intelligence is matched to context, it helps you focus on the threats that matter and avoid spending energy on irrelevant noise. It also helps you communicate risk to stakeholders using language they understand, such as operational disruption and safety impact, rather than only technical detail. Over time, As you build internal intelligence through monitoring, audits, and disciplined evidence, your program becomes more confident because you are not guessing about your own environment. That is the real promise of threat intelligence in OT. Not prediction, but clarity, prioritization, and better decisions.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.